It's more challenging than ever to meet the demands of competing priorities that work throws our way. From emails to reports and project proposals, we need help to get it all done. Grammarly is the essential AI communication assistant that boosts your productivity at work, so you can get more of what you need done faster, no matter what or where you're writing. Grammarly sets the standard for responsible AI and equips you with the best tools to do your job, like AI-powered features that help you write and edit quickly everywhere you write, or tone features that help you communicate more confidently. Just a few clicks can tailor your tone and writing so you come across exactly as you intend. No wonder 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Let Grammarly take the busy work off your plate so you can focus on high-impact work. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial pound law, that is pound 529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Good morning, brother Low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, who does such amazing work over at Bracketeer.org. They get a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. We're going to be taking a look at what we've all gotten the last few weeks, just how dominant the SEC has been, the landscape of these mid-major conferences where we thought that we knew what we were getting out of a lot of these mid-major conferences in terms of their top teams coming into the year, and well, that has went into the abyss a little bit with what we've been seeing, so some of the changes out there. And then in the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but had a small but fun day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
A few ridiculous non-covers on this day as Iowa was leading pretty much the entirety of their game against Iowa State until the final 4 minutes, and they do not cover the closing line of about 5.5. Iowa State, they get the job done, they get the win, they get the cover by kind of 89-80 as both teams go 11 of 28 from three-point range. Iowa actually goes 13 of 15 from the free throw line, but where Iowa State was able to win this game was on the boards, 46-34. They were able to manhandle Iowa in this one for Peyton Sanford, 13 points, goes 3 of 10 from three-point range, but the guy that was able to get it done, Joshua Jefferson for Iowa State, 19 points, 10 boards, double-double, and then off the bench, Curtis Jones, 23 points. A little bit of a surprise. Iowa kid Nate Heisey began his career over at Northern Iowa. He was able to supply the team with 10 points, 6 boards. In the big one, it was Iowa State being able to get the job done. For Bethune-Cookman, they get outscored 23-4 in the final 10 minutes of their game against Virginia. They were actually leading with about 10 or so minutes remaining, and they also got outscored 13-0 in the final 5+ minutes to lose by a count of 59-41, unable to cover 15.5 as for Bethune-Cookman. They go 5 of 20 from three-point range. Virginia, they were slow in getting going. They had 2 points in the first 7 minutes. They had 2 points in the first 9 minutes of this game, but it was Mr. Saunders, Elijah Saunders, his 15 points, 8 boards that got the team back on track off the bench. Jason Kofi, I like what I've been seeing out of him, 12 points, and Ishan Sharma, hopefully I said that correctly, he also had 12 points off the bench as well for a Bethune-Cookman team that won ice cold towards the back half of this one. For Virginia Tech, this was their first win in quite literally 30 days. They knock off North Carolina A&T 95-67. For Virginia Tech, one of your worst cover teams in all of college basketball thus far this season, but they look sharp on this day, going 14 out of 36 from three-point range. Off the bench, you had a combined 30 points out of Rodney Brown Jr. along with Ben Hammond, as they were able to go a combined 6 of 8 from three-point range. For Virginia Tech, still a bit sloppy with about 16 turnovers in this one, but for North Carolina A&T, they themselves turned the ball over 13 times, and they got bludgeoned on the glass. Virginia Tech wins that battle by a count of 48-30, with being able to get 8 boards in this one out of Tyler Johnson. So Virginia Tech is able to snap that skid, and for Chattanooga, they go on the road. They get it done against Evansville. This by a count of 75-67. Evansville been one of your less than savory offenses this year, but they do go 10 of 28 from three-point range. Tanner Cuff, he supplies the team with 18 points, 5 rebounds, but Evansville loses that rebound battle 31-29. They also lose the turnover battle 15-13 as Trey Bonham, it was bottoms up on this one. 4 of 6 from three-point range for a Chattanooga team that I knew that the three-point shooting was coming for them. 12 of 26 from three-point range. Hunter Huff and Trey Bonham both shooting below 30% from 3 going into the night. They were able to heat up. Campbell was able to heat up as well. For Campbell, they just take it to the Citadel. 86-58 the final. I am like, this was a game for a while. The Citadel was down about 3 points with a minute remaining in the first half, and then they just got bludgeoned in the second half. Nolan Dorsey, he's able to supply the team with 19 points. Campbell, 12 of 27 from 3 and 14 of 14 at the free throw line. Meanwhile, the Citadel, they go 5 of 24 from three-point range. The Citadel loses the turnover battle 14-6. They lose a rebound battle 32-28. So they just got lapped in pretty much every facet of basketball. And for Texas, they are back to being able to get W's. They take down New Mexico by a count of 91-67. And for Texas, who else is back for this team is Tremont Mark. Dealt with a little bit of injury to begin the season, but 14 points, 7 boards, 3 of 5 from three-point range. And New Mexico State, to their credit, they go 6 of 18 from three-point range. Christian Cook was a cooking with 22 points, but they also got cooked in the turnover department. They lose that battle 15-10. They lose a rebound battle 36-24, as he had 7 boards, 18 points out of Arthur Kaluma in this one. For Texas, they go 17 of 23 at the free throw line, so nice, clean, and easy there. And Arkansas State, they get the outright win, so they avoid the letdown spot after that big win over Memphis, but no cover. 83-79 was the final in this one as the game goes over in the final few seconds. And for UT Arlington, pretty good three-point shooting expose from them. They go 14 of 30 from three-point range. Jaden Wells able to put in their 19, and Darren Todd, the Todd father, was able to give you 23 points, and Arkansas State wins this thing on the glass, 36-33. They win that battle. They also won the turnover battle by a count of 13-10 with Lance Ware, former top 50 or so recruit, 4 blocks, 7 boards for UT Arlington. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting right now in college basketball, last 7 days have been a little bit overwhelming. About 53% of games have gone over the total, 111 overs to 97 unders, while favorites in this time span hitting at a little bit over 51.3%, 107, 102, and 3 against the spread. And overall for the season, it has been rough for favorites, hitting at just 48.5%. Underdogs at 8-16, 7-67, and 24 against the spread, while overs hitting at right around about 50.6%, 802 overs to 783 unders. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now. That's what we all got on a small but fun Thursday. Now let's take a look at Friday and the weekend. Let's take a look at what we've been getting the last few weeks in general and chat with our good friend and Rocco Miller, Racketeer.org. Next right here on Cuz with myself, Peggy Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And we're back to Love You Las Vegas for Cuz with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it's always great to be joined by this man as we've got Rocco Miller aboard. He does such tremendous work over at Racketeer.org. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. I know that he's been doing an amazing job. Taking a look at all that we've been getting on this front. Everything from what we had prior to the start of the season, now that we're in the season, some of the takeaways there, adjusting his bracketology and doing an amazing job of keeping up with what has been an ever-changing landscape in college basketball. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and then the number 8 altogether. And Rocco, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Greg. Always good to be on with you. How have you been during this slow week? Have you had a chance to catch your breath a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always one that's jonesing for more college basketball, though. We don't need a break when you do what you love every single day. But that said, with regards to what we've seen over the last few weeks, what have been some of your main takeaways? Because I know that coming into the season, you were talking about really the big two conferences and the Big Ten and the SEC having so many more resources than everyone else. And for the Big Ten, it's been a fine year. I don't think that anyone thought that this was going to be the best conference in all of college basketball. But what you were talking about with the SEC has not just come true, in my opinion, but I feel like the SEC has had the best start for a conference I've really ever seen.
I heard a stat earlier today that out of the time that Ken Palm's been around since 1997, there's only been 3 leagues so far as a composite that has been stronger than the 2025 SEC. I think one of those was actually the 97 ACC with Tim Duncan and a loaded league then, and I think the 04 ACC, and then a more recent Big 12 team, I think in 2017. And those are all just by decimal points. It's not like any of those are prestigious in comparison. It backs it up when you look at some of the bracketology numbers. It's very early for bracketology. I'll just say that as a disclaimer right now. But I think a couple of things you can start to look at on the proof in the pudding, which are the resume measures that the committee banks on. One of the strongest of all of those is the strength of resume. And right now, if you look at just the top 25 teams, Greg, 10 of them are in the SEC. And that doesn't include teams like Arkansas, who just beat Michigan, or Missouri, who just beat Kansas. These are 10 completely different teams, and including 4 of the top 5, with Auburn number 1, Tennessee 2, Alabama 4, and Kentucky 5, and even Oklahoma 6 now. That actually just got updated to have 5 of the top 6, 10 of the top 25. Now, we do have a huge weekend ahead. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if they hang on and kind of hold serve this weekend, they don't have to win every game as a league, but certainly keep winning at the clip that they are or close to it. They'll enter league play with that type of advantage with not much non-conference left at all. That will set the stage for what is bracketology next month and the rest of the year, meaning that you could see a team in the SEC out of 18 league games maybe play 16 of those 18 or close to all 18 in quadrant 1. It's pretty mind-blowing and certainly unprecedented for the net era, which began in 2019.
Yeah, it has been incredible what we've been seeing out of the SEC thus far, and it has been incredible what we've been seeing out of these teams. And just what do you think is the main takeaway with regards to what we've seen in terms of their style of play as well? Because I think we both agree that the coaches that have been hired on in the SEC have truly been the difference makers. But I just look at the SEC right now, and it just feels like they play a little bit of a different blend of basketball, one that is super up-tempo, but they get back on defense as well. And I think that it's just cardio and just these guys that are able to get up and down the floor and are able to fly for all 40 minutes that are really making the difference, while the rest of the teams that they play against just feel a little bit tired late in these games.
Right. Yeah, I think with the exception of maybe Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, I think those are the 3 maybe on the below average tempo scale. You'll have a lot more on the fast pace. Obviously, Alabama always a top 5 tempo team, but also with Kentucky's new style, that certainly jumps. Even Vanderbilt's been a joy to watch at 9-1. They have a top 25 tempo in the last few weeks, and a lot of trends like that. Arkansas playing faster, Missouri playing faster. I would agree. I think the bigger story is, just talking with coaches across the country, the average NIL SEC programs right now is somewhere in that $6-7 million range, and a complete difference maker. You saw it in the SEC ACC Challenge, where the SEC won 14-2, and of course the 2 losses were highly competitive games, with Auburn playing Duke, pretty closely to the Horn in Cameron, Kentucky going into a really tough Little John Coliseum. Those were the only 2 ACC wins, and I thought, overall, most of those games were blowouts. Were double digits, at least 10 of the 14, I think, were by double digits. So big gap that they're building, and Big Ten has the depth. I think almost 1 through 18. Of course, my hometown Washington Huskies are going to take a while to figure things out. Minnesota's struggled, but outside of those 2 or 3 at the bottom, I think the top 15 or so are all pretty strong. They just don't have a dominant team yet. Maybe UCLA can become that. Maybe Purdue can become that. I like the pieces at Ohio State and Michigan, maybe Maryland if they can figure out how to win on the road. But the SEC's already got the proof. Auburn won the Maui Invitational. Tennessee's gone to Louisville and won by 20 plus. Alabama's won in multiple parts of the country already. And Kentucky came up to Seattle and beat Gonzaga. That's just the very top of the league. There's a lot of proof all the way through the depth. You could go to Ole Miss. You could go to Mississippi State. A lot of great examples in the SEC. So I think overall budget, not only do they have the resources to bring in the talent, But they've hired, like you said, the staffs. It's not just the head coaches. These staffs are much larger these days. Went from 3 bench coaches to 5 assistant bench coaches, plus the supporting staffs are a little larger. A lot of these schools, especially at the SEC level, have general managers, and their job is to go out and identify talent and then align the resources to bring the talent in. It's become like a mini G League to that example, and I think you're seeing just the disparity when they play in all these non-conference games because it takes almost a perfect game to beat most of these teams.
Yeah, it really does. It's been incredible what we've been seeing on that front as Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at bracketeer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we need to talk about this league as well because this is one of those leagues that has been one of the best in all of college basketball over the last few years. But I just take a look at the Big East, and I feel like out of all of the, shall we say, power conference leagues, this one is the most open at this point, just because with UConn, we saw them lose all 3 games out there in Maui. Marquette Sands that loss against Iowa State has looked rock solid, but as we know, they leave a little bit of something to be desired with regards to rebounding in terms of that low post play as well. What have you made out of the Big East thus far? A Big East where typically DePaul along with Georgetown are by far your bottom 2 teams out there, but they've looked a little bit better this year, while teams like Seton Hall and company have looked a little bit worse.
It's been a struggle for the Big East by and large. They did have a couple nice results in the Big East Big 12 Challenge, which was required based on how November and the MTE season went for a lot of the teams in the conference, obviously headlined by the UConn 0-3 performance in Maui. But Creighton went through a rough period where some illnesses hit the team. They didn't perform very well at the players' era. They did salvage a win on the last day, which I think was good. And now Creighton turned around and beat Kansas just recently in the last week. So that certainly will help them bounce back. But losing Pop Isaacs for the year, man, that's a big blow for them. They do have Steve Ashworth, who was also hurt. He's back in the lineup. So, yeah, just a lot of complicated stories. It's all case by case. Of course, Georgetown and DePaul did upgrade. So I think they're top 100 worthy now, which the league really needed. You couldn't afford to have those games like they were last year and other years be quad 4 games in your league. That definitely hurt the league. And I think it, in an interesting way, drove down the bids last year. They only got the 3 teams in last year. But I think the problem this year is the middle and, 2 through 5 even is a lot lower at the present moment. We have a long way to go. Big non-conference games this Saturday. But as it stands today, only Marquette's a dominant team. They're 3rd in strength of resume. After that, 48's the next best team with St. John's. And then you have Xavier, Creighton, and UConn in the 60s and Butler in the 70s. We're early in this game, but when we get to March, if you're not a team that can give us a top 50 or even 60 resume, you're probably not getting too close of a look from the committee. That's a big red flag right now. But I think overall, there are some teams growing. Like you look at the predictive metrics, you just look at the last 2 weeks, like a Bart Torvik model will provide you. You see that Villanova's playing a lot better. St. John's has been better. They got a little bit snake bit in the officiating in the Baylor game, as Rick Pitino will tell you. But I think long-term St. John's does have top 20 talent, and they've shown that. So I expect them to play their way back in. Creighton, of course, has that opportunity, and so does UConn. UConn, another big game coming up Saturday night in the Garden against Gonzaga. Pretty pro UConn crowd, as always, in the Garden, so they got to find a way to get that done.
Yeah, they certainly do. There are going to be a lot of opportunities. You just alluded to one of them. The UConn versus Gonzaga game, in my opinion, one of the most strange, I guess you'd call it, neutral court versus neutral court buy-ups, because you had the game last year that was in the great state of Washington. This year, they're playing that game at MSG. Both of those games are neutral court games, which, as we know, one team was traveling a heck lot more than the other in both of those cases. So you've got that going on. But that said, in terms of what we've got for the Saturday, and we've got a little bit for Friday, but let's call it what it is. It's a little bit of bare slate. What are you taking a look at? Because I look at that Memphis versus Clemson game as being a big one. Memphis has fallen off a little bit with that Arkansas State loss, but has been a nice start to the season for them. And then additionally, we were talking about the Big East and how they're looking to be able to build themselves up. I think it's going to be a great litmus test for Creighton going against Alabama, a Creighton team that you mentioned with Pops Isaacs. Who knows what we're going to be seeing out of them moving forward?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a big upside opportunity, I guess, for the Blue Jays. I really don't expect it to be all that close, having to go down there. But the way Creighton plays and with the confidence of the Kansas win, perhaps Kalkbrenner can provide some problems to the Tide. It's going to be a really tough environment, and I think just overall a more talented, deeper Alabama team. But you never know. And, of course, if Creighton gets that, that is the kind of unexpected, big, high-profile road win that this league overall needs. So certainly not a game to be slept on. But again, I don't think you go into that with the expectation that Creighton's got a 50-50 shot. I certainly wouldn't say they do. But I am looking at this overall Saturday. It's loaded. You can go in a lot of directions. I tried to, earlier today, narrow down my favorite 10 of the day, and that was even hard. I think the top game of the day might be Tennessee at Illinois, mainly because it's at Illinois, who, of course, power-wise is a little bit weaker. Tennessee, number 1 in most of the power rankings, number 2 in Ken Palm, but they're 1 or 2 in pretty much everything. Easily their toughest road test, and Illinois has been flawless at home. They just had Wisconsin at home, but they haven't had a major non-conference test at home. So this is going to be a hyped crowd. I also think the underrated value of this game is, Tennessee's just got an elite number 2 defense in the country, and Illinois has played a top 5 defense over the last 3 weeks. So can they keep that going against the potent offense of Tennessee, who's got Zakiya Ziegler, and Chaz Lanier's off to an incredible start for the Vols? I actually think that's the number 1, most intriguing game, because I could see it literally going either way. We talked about Gonzaga, UConn. That's bigger just because of the fact that they've both already taken some losses. Gonzaga, of course, disappointing loss to West Virginia down in the Bahamas, and then blew a 16-point lead and took the loss to Kentucky. So they're going to look to bounce back. They've been working to fix those problems that they had in the second half. And we know the story about UConn. Really tried to right the ship. They went down to Texas, looked really good. I'm not all the way sold on Texas, so I think this UConn-Gonzaga game will tell us even more about both, and a really important win for whoever gets it. And then I think my third game, maybe, although Auburn's got a nice advantage playing in Atlanta, I do think this Ohio State team has a nice build. I love the point guard play that they're getting. Bruce Thornton's a very underrated player, in my opinion. His offensive rating is top 11 in the country per Ken Palm. But more importantly, he gets everybody involved. His stat sheet is crazy. Michi Johnson was critical to bring back. Micah Parrish is a winner from San Diego State. They took 1 loss on the road at Maryland in an unfortunate, heartbreaking loss to Pitt. But I want to see if this Ohio State team can go toe-to-toe with Auburn. That one's third on my list. A very underrated game, another undefeated team. And who knows, maybe they'll steamroll again. But Florida Gators taking on Arizona State. Arizona State's just impressed me in almost every single game, even the road loss at Gonzaga. They've won all their other tests. They beat St. Mary's. They beat New Mexico. They beat Grand Canyon. They beat Santa Clara. And Florida, they've done a nice job with their schedule to where they haven't had to play a top 20 team, but they've played a lot of decent teams like Road Florida State, Wichita, Wake Forest, Virginia, even bringing in Southern Illinois and playing South Florida. So they haven't played the absolute bottom, but they also haven't had the big test. So their next 2 games, they get Arizona State, and then on Tuesday, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, they'll get North Carolina. But as a staff for the Gators, they've got to figure out how they're going to attack these 2 back-to-back. And I actually just think Arizona State's going to be a really tough test. So really looking forward to that game.
Yep, that is going to be a big one. That game that you were leading off with, Tennessee versus Illinois, that is a massive game because Tennessee, under the radar to many people, a top 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, because when you think Tennessee, you think defense, but this year they've been putting it all together. As a man that always puts it all together, that'd be Rocco Miller, who's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And Rocco, you do a great job as well with the mid-major show with one of our good friends, Sean Paul, over on the Field of 68. And want to get your thoughts there. Just what have you noticed in terms of mid-major landscape? Because I've talked about this on the podcast a little bit, and I want to get your thoughts that a lot of these teams that we came into the season and we thought that they were going to be the clear favorites in their conference just have really fallen short thus far. And really, aside from a few select mid-majors like UC Irvine out there in the Big West, we've been seeing a lot of these mid-major conferences be a little bit more up in the air than I think that we anticipated going into the season.
Yeah, great point. I think it just shows the resources not only at the high major level, but at the mid-major level are constantly being reallocated. There's not as many advanced scouts for these programs as there are at the high major, but you could find a lot of diamonds in the rough and go from almost worst to first. So like in the case of the Coastal Athletic, the CAA, Elon is a team that's really popping. They beat Notre Dame. They hammered an experienced Wofford team last Saturday with the Simpkins boys in the backcourt and Billy Taylor leading the charge. They've just done a really great job. I'm also enthused by the turnout they had last weekend at the Schar Center. So Elon, of course, a team that's relatively new historically to Division I, and they've been down in the CAA for a long time, never made the NCAA tournament. There's a lot of excitement at a place like that. And that's a league where, Towson was the preseason pick. They've dealt with countless injuries. I covered them in Canada. But I think, when they get back to health, when and if, they should be right back in contention. But you've got Charleston with a great offense, not so much defense quite yet. Same with Wilmington. Wilmington's actually stepped up their defense a little bit more. That's like a great example of a league where this thing could go a million different directions. And Elon, as much as anybody, has a chance to knock it off. Northeastern also another team to watch along with Hofstra. One for sure. I think you look at the Big South. High Point was far and away everybody's pick. Certainly the most talent still, and maybe they will run away with the league at some point. But I also thought, Radford sitting there at 9-2. They've been extremely feisty. They've won all of their games against like opponents. Their 2 losses are to high majors. So they're in the mix. Longwood's got a lot of talent, and I think UNC Asheville can hang. As it stands right now, I think that the Big South is a league that suddenly is up for grabs. I know it's not much of a mid-major, but you could maybe count it. The American Conference, UAB was the pick. They've really had a rough start. You saw Memphis, they're clearly the favorite with the most talent, but they still are Memphis. And North Texas is the most disciplined with the best defense, as always, so they're going to be right there in the mix. Wichita State's really upgraded their talent. I've been impressed with many of their performances so far. And I think there's room for a sneaky team like maybe a Rice, a UTSA, or somebody from out of left field creep into the top 5. So the league overall has been disappointing, but when a league is disappointing, it creates opportunity for a great story. That's another example. And we could go on. Like there's countless examples. Like if you look at even the Atlantic 10. The Atlantic 10, Dayton's been good. VCU was the pick, but they've stumbled a couple times. We thought St. Louis was going to be good. They've been really struggling. George Mason is now looking like they might compete for a title. In my opinion, Rhode Island started undefeated. Loyola Chicago still undefeated. Even at that level, St. Bonaventure's been great as well. There's a lot to look for, and these leagues are really hard to just pin down a champion right now.
Oh, I am right there with you. The landscape of mid-major college basketball, it is so much fun to look at. Heck, we thought Colgate was going to be the big bad wolf out there in the Patriot League. We have seen teams like American Bucknell have a few nice wins, and Colgate has been looking a little bit shaky, though. Looked much better against Kentucky a few days ago, so that's encouraging for them. But we've got an interesting landscape of college basketball. Rocco, you cover it all, from the highest of the high majors to the lowest of the low. You're doing a little bit of everything. You're doing great shows. You're doing great work over on bracketeer.org. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. So, each week we have the Mid-Major Show on Field of 68. Check that out. We record every Monday. Usually comes out Tuesday. Every once in a while, it'll be Wednesday. So if you just want to bank on something, check every Wednesday morning. Should be up on the YouTube page. We tweet that out. Also over on Blue Sky now as well. Rocco Miller 8 on everything, whether it's X/Twitter or Blue Sky. And then bracketeer.org, coming to the time you hear this podcast that we're on right now. I'll have 2 preview articles to get you ready for your Saturday. The first one will be 15 different games previewed. We just touched on some of my favorite ones here on this show. There'll be even more, even down into the mid-major ranks with great matchups like UC Irvine at Oregon State, which I can't wait for, St. Mary's versus Boise State, Bradley versus Santa Clara, McNeese versus Mississippi State, and Grand Canyon versus Georgia, all very key games this Saturday. So check out those articles if you have the opportunity before Saturday starts. And then last but not least, for me personally, getting out of here, and I'll be in your great state of Wisconsin, Greg, for the triple header in Milwaukee on Sunday. Really looking forward to that. It starts off with Milwaukee versus Akron. Then it will be Northwestern versus Georgia Tech, and topped with Loyola Chicago taking on the San Francisco Dons. All 3 games should be fantastic in the Bucks Arena of Fiserv Forum. And then from there, I'll be out to Northern Iowa Monday night for a game against Montana. Tuesday, a Kansas City appearance for Drake, Kansas State. And then Wednesday, VCU at New Mexico. So a really great 4-day trip of a lot of great basketball games.
Someone's racking up some frequent flyer miles. That sounds like an absolutely incredible week of college basketball viewing. Rocco, he is dedicated to the sport unlike anyone else, and I'm not kidding when I say it. From the highest of the highs to the lowest of the low majors, he covers it all, does amazing work, and be sure to get some Spotted Cow when you're out there in the great state of Wisconsin as well. That's my beer recommendation for you, Rocco. No trip is complete without it, but no podcast is complete without getting Rocco Miller on from time to time as well, and he joined me today. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Visa Family Podcast, and coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rocco Miller, who does great work over at Bracketeer.org. Taking a look at this wonderful game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we eat some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GN_41. This is essentially in time order with the games involving the Patriot League at the bottom. Army versus George Washington, Boston U versus Merrimack. Those are games a part of the extra games board, but that said, it's a small slate but a fun slate. And how about if we dive in with 881, 882, one of the games I'll be writing up. Louisiana Tech is going to be playing us to Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, a 10.5 to an 11-point dog. Total on this game is 145.5 to a 146. I'm willing to lay it with Louisiana Tech. I'm willing to go up to 12 here with them, so I'll be writing them up with this Louisiana Tech team. They have been right around about 125th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I actually do think that that's going to be going northward with the Bacho man, Yanyo Bacho. Give you 19 points, north of 7.5 rebounds per game. It's a Louisiana Tech team that absolutely dominates down low. One of the best shot blocking teams in all of college basketball with over 7 blocks per game. And for Georgia Southern, right now they just don't have that main man down low. You've got Tyson Brown who's been able to give you 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but I just don't see who's going to be matching up with Bacho. I know that Avante Parker is back for this team after he last season supplied them with about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but he's been dealing with injury. Georgia Southern team that's very much looking to play up tempo. They're in the top 20 in terms of total possessions per game, but they're outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they turn the ball over 16 times per game. Additionally, they foul a ton. They themselves get to the free throw line quite a bit, and they shoot 65% as a collective at the free throw line. You've got Adante Holloman, who's been able to supply the team with 16 points per game, but he's currently out for this team. He's been really their top scorer, who's missed each of the last 3 games. Not likely to be out here for this one. Nicavion White, an ace junior college transfer, has had to pick up the mantle in terms of the scoring prowess. He's been able to give them about 12.5 points per game. And Bradley Douglas, the transfer from Little Rock, has been able to supply this team with about 10 points per game as well. But for Louisiana Tech, love what I'm seeing out of Amari Abraham, former starter over at Ole Miss, 2.5 steals, 14 points per game, shooting 42% from 3-point range. And Sean Newman Jr., he is right now in the top 3 in all of college basketball in terms of assists per game, doing so while turning the ball over just 2.5 times per game to go along with his 8.8 assists per game, 9 points per contest, mid-30s three-point shooter in his own right, with having just the added help in the backcourt like at Devin Ree, who's able to shoot it well from 3-point range, shooting 48% this season. To think that Louisiana Tech gets the job done against a lackadaisical Georgia Southern defense. I did set my line at a 146.5 with regards to this total. I'm in on the over, and I'll be writing up Louisiana Tech, willing to lay up to 12 with them. 883, 884 on the card. Omaha is going to be on the road against Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa, 13-point favorite. Total on this game is 139.5. Set my total at a 140. This is the absolute max I'm willing to take the over on, but I'm willing to take a look at the over for Northern Iowa. They are outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but they've been pretty efficient with Titan Anderson being able to headline things with 13 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, steal per contest. Just become a nice do-it-all sort of player, but Trey Campbell in the backcourt has been able to lend some nice facilitation. Was a starter for the team each of the last 2 years. Now he's been doling it out a little bit more with 3 assists, a little bit over a steal per game. Career about 38.5% three-point shooter as well. Northern Iowa has been able to shoot 40% from the outside. It's a Nebraska-Omaha team that has really tried to put a little bit more emphasis on defense. We have noticed under this current coaching regime that they've really been getting slower and slower with every passing year, but for Nebraska-Omaha, even though they have slowed down their tempo, it hasn't necessarily led to better defense. They're currently 254th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. To their credit, they're actually allowing fewer points per possession when they are on the road rather than at home, which I find to be a little bit strange. But where this Omaha team is very vulnerable is along the outside. It's Nebraska-Omaha, allowing teams to shoot 36.3% from 3. That is 296th in all of college basketball. Big reason why I'm willing to lay it here with Northern Iowa. I did set them as a 14-point favorite. For Omaha, you do have Markel Sutton, who's been really good down low for the team, 17 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. But Jacob Hudson is able to give you 5+ boards per contest at 6'11". He's got good versatility. And for Omaha, they're a lower tempo team that turns the ball over about 12.5 times per game. J.J. White used used to be that main facilitator. Now it's Lance Waddles who comes over from North Dakota State, and he's given the team about 2.5 assists per game. Hasn't really done anything bad, but we've noticed that he's had a tough time being able to find guys for assists in the last few games. Not sure what's been happening there, but backcourt seems to be a little bit disjointed at this point for Nebraska Omaha. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team as well, in that you've got your top guys. You've got J.J. White, who off the ball is shooting about 33% from three, and you're getting 48% three-point shooting. Deshaun Glover has stepped in. He's been able to give the team about 8.5 points per game, but outside of your main starting five, just not a lot to be had. Do think that Northern Iowa is able to control things down low. It's an Omaha team that has really been struggling with their offense, with 70 points or fewer in their last 4 games. Meanwhile, Northern Iowa has been, despite the fact that they play quite slowly, gotten to at least 80 points in 3 of their last 5 games, with the lone exceptions being against North Texas and St. Bonaventure. So, do like the over, so I total 140, and I'm willing to lay up to 13.5 with Northern Iowa. 885, 886 on the card. Indiana's on the road against Nebraska. Another game that I'm going to be writing up, as Nebraska does find themselves as a favorite of 3.5 points, and total on this game, it is 153. I'm going to write up the under in this game. Recognize that both teams are in the top 85 in terms of total possessions per game, but big reason why I did set my total more around to 149.5 is that I think that you're going to get a lot of dead possessions in this game. Indiana, 280th in all of college basketball in terms of ball security. They're turning the ball over darn near 14 times per game, but I do think that they hold in this game. I don't want them on the money line, but I'm willing to take the 3 to 3.5 as I set my line at 1.5, because I think that they win that battle down low. Umar Ballo, 2 blocks, 9 boards, 13 points per game. He's been rock solid, and Malik Renew, just all sorts of versatility there. 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists, stealing per contest, while Mackenzie Mbakbo has shot it well from 3-point range. It remains to be seen what you're going to be able to get out of Cannon Carlisle. He had a nice last few games against Gonzaga. He was able to put in there a few buckets with a few boards, and then 14 points, 5 assists in that last game against Minnesota. Very good signs for this team. And for Nebraska, Connor Essegian has been touch and go really over the last few seasons, dating back to his time with the Wisconsin Badgers, but feels like he's starting to get into a little bit more inferno mode, as he had a combined 51 points in the 2 games against North Florida and then South Dakota, and then just 1 point and 1 rebound against Michigan State in that complete bludgeoning. So, I mean, it's been the best of times and worst of times for him. This is a Nebraska team that is in the top 40, actually, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so they've done a good job there, but they're only shooting at home about 32.5% from 3-point range, overall 29.8% from the outside. Outside of Essegian and Bryce Williams, your top scorers, giving you 17.5 points per game. Not a lot of outside shooting with this team, though. You do have a lot of guys like an Andrew Morgan, who comes in from North Dakota State, who's able to give you 5.5 or so rebounds per game. Berkey Boyatunkel, hopefully I said that correctly, he's come in from UCLA. He's been able to give the team about 6 or so boards, a steal and a half per game, but he's dealt with a little bit of injury as well. He was limited in that game against Michigan State, so that's been a little bit rough for them. And Aaron Eulis, he's more of a facilitator rather than a scorer, and they need Raleigh Warser to become a little bit more of that main trigger man, as he's only given out about 2.5 assists per game. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a team matchup, so my total 149.5, writing up the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Indiana. 887, 888 on the card. Another game that I'll write up. St. Thomas is playing goes to Western Michigan. Western Michigan, a underdog of 10 to 10.5 points. So on this game, it is 148. I'll write up the under here because you do have a Western Michigan team that is really slowing down their tempo. They are well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but I mean, to the credit of St. Thomas, this has been a team that's been a top 225 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Western Michigan, this team has had a very brutal time in terms of their 3-point shooting. For Western Michigan, they're shooting as a collective right around about 30% from distance, so I do like what Owen Lobsinger is able to bring to the table. Lobsinger has been able to give the team double figures. He's doing a nice job pulling in there about 7.5 or so rebounds per game. They don't necessarily have that main facilitator right now. EJ Ryans and his 2.5 assists per game, he throws in there about 5 points per contest. He's leading the way with that regard. And then for St. Thomas, this has been a team that has been a make it or take it sort of team. Typically, this team ranks outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. They've actually been in the upper half of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. They don't generate a lot of second chances, as they're 330th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Kendall Blue is right now the only guy in the roster that's hauling in there more than 3.7 rebounds per game, as he has supplied the team with about 4.5 rebounds, 11.5 points per game. He does give out about 2.5 assists per game, and Drake Dobbs, he's able to dole out about 3.5 assists per game for a unit that is currently shooting 39% from 3-point range. Do you think that that's going to be going downward just a little bit moving forward, but Miles Barnstable has been able to throw in there 13.5 points per game. On the flip side, Markai Strickland has stepped in for Western Michigan. He's done a rock solid job, giving the team about 13.5 points per game as well. And for Western Michigan, they really don't turn the ball over a ton, only about 10.5 or so turnovers per game. But I do think that with St. Thomas's inability to be able to grab a whole heck of a lot of second and third chance opportunities with Western Michigan and how slowly they're playing, that's going to limit really the scoring that we see in this game. I did set my total at 141.5, so I'm going to be writing up the under. And then with St. Thomas, set them as a 9.5 point favorite. So here at 10 plus, taking those points with Western Michigan. 889, 890 on the betting board. It is Weber State on the road against Utah Tech. Utah Tech a 3-point underdog. Totals between 142.5 to 143, and I'll be writing up Weber State. I set them as a 6.5 point favorite. You've got a Utah Tech team that's just all sorts of brutal right now. Outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 with regards to the rebound rate, and Weber State leaves something to be desired defensively as well. Clocking in, entering into Thursday right around about 295th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but got Blaze Threat, who is a threat to go off at any time. 2.5 steals, 4.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 18 points per game for a Weber State team that they're pretty methodical with the ball. They only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They're generating some turnovers. Mikael Tomley, who comes over from Idaho State, he has supplied the team with 12 points per game. This team should be able to win that battle down low, as you've had Nigel Burris be able to show some versatility. Always a good 3-point shooter, even at Idaho 2 seasons ago, shot 45% from 3, 48% 3-point shooter this year, but supplying the team with 7 points, 5 rebounds per game, and it's a Utah Tech team that they just have not been able to find their bearings from the outside. This team is very reliant upon that 3-point shooting, and they just haven't had a lot of that. Beyond Riley has been in and out of the fold as well. He's really their top guy. 14 points, 8 boards, about 2 assists per contest, and him being in and out, he missed that game against Utah State. That is massive for this team. You've got Akeem Byrd, who comes on over after he began his career at UMBC and Marist, and he's been able to give the team a little bit in the backcourt, about 8 points per game, but has never been a great 3-point shooter, a less than 30% career 3-point shooter. Meanwhile, for Weber State, you do have Dyson Kaler down low, who's able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. Even when Riley's out there, he's only 6'6", and Tennessee Rainwater, he was supposed to be a guy that was supposed to help out on the glass a little bit more. 8 points, 4 boards, shooting less than 25% from 3-point range. You just don't have a lot here for a Utah Tech team that they're doing a better job of taking care of the ball, but they're shooting 27.5% from 3, and that's supposed to be one of their main fortes. So I did set my total at 144.5. I am in on this total over. You've got a pair of teams well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but do think that Weber State takes it to Utah Tech. I'm willing to lay up to 6 with them. 891, 892 on the betting board. It is South Dakota State, and they are on the road against Colorado. Colorado is an 8.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 146, and set my line at 8.5 as well. I am seeing a few 8s out there, and an 8 that would be my max buy point on Colorado. With this Colorado Buffaloes unit, it has been certainly a little bit touch and go for them throughout the season. They had their triumph when they played against UConn a few weeks ago out there in Maui. They've had a few close calls when they've had at home, but I like the versatility of Andrei Yagmovsky. 13 points, 5 boards while shooting 35.5% from 3-point range. Now, for South Dakota State, they are probably going to have their biggest, shall we say, chance of being able to pull the upset being on the glass. But Oscar Clough, the transfer from Washington State, was actually a teammate of Yagmovsky 8 seasons ago, doing a really nice job with a block, 17 points, 11 rebounds per game. But this is a South Dakota State unit that just isn't the same with their 3-point shooting as they have been in the past, shooting less than 32% from distance as a collective. Like what Joe Saylor is able to bring to the table in the backcourt, about 13 points per contest. He's shooting 35% from 3-point range, but out of everyone that has attempted at least 2 threes, as averaging more than 4 points per game, he is the only guy that shoots above 32.3% from 3-point range. Now, the team as a collective does a good job of facilitating. You've got a pair of guys in the backcourt, and Kellen Gary, along with Stoney Hadnot, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 5 assists per contest, and then Clough throws in their 2.5 assists per game as well. But for Colorado, I do think that what you're able to get in terms of the combination of just size and the ability to be able to pop it, with Trevor Baskin being able to give you 7 boards, 9 points. He, at the D2 ranks, was shooting over 40% from 3. You've been able to get 40% 3-point shooting, 12 points, 4 boards out of 6'10" Elijah Malone. I think that that's going to be rough for a South Dakota State team that, once again, has been having a little bit of tough time on defense. They've been a little bit better with their perimeter defense this season, but still a team that ranks well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not a South Dakota State team that's ever going to be really forcing the issue in terms of turnovers, and that's big for a Colorado team that has been turning the ball over about 15 times per contest, as their backcourt is in a little bit of transition. Julian Hammond has been that main guy giving out 3 assists. He's been really the only of their top 7 scorers that has been able to give this team anything from a season ago. And for South Dakota State has been very hit or miss with regards to their offense as well. So, circumstance where I do think that the Colorado State defense going to be able to win out in this spot. They have now given up 72 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Did semi-total, though, at a 146.5. Do think that there might be just a chance for some late game falling, but do think that both of these teams do dive in a little bit more with their 3-point shooting, and Colorado is a much better offense at home rather than on the road. So 146 or less in on the over, and with Colorado willing to lay up to 8 with them. This is a game that's currently off the board, but we'll be finding it on the board in the next few hours. 893, 894. It's North Dakota on the road against UT San Antonio. Meet for the road runners, and the reason why this game is presently off the board. This game was supposed to be played in November, was postponed due to weather. This has been rescheduled on this day. So when the original betting board was put into place, this game was off of the board. Now it is on the board because of a little bit of a scheduling snafu, but that said, with this North Dakota unit, I did set them as a underdog of 12.5 points, and this is a total that I set at a 156.5. So 156 or less, and on the over 157 or higher the under, and I'd be willing to lay up to 12 with the UTSA, 13 or more, taking those points with North Dakota. For North Dakota, Trayson Eaglestaff has been rock solid for them in terms of a scoring perspective. 18.5 points, 3 boards, shooting 36% from 3-point range. He just needs a little bit more help, and you have been able to get that down low out of Mark Kuljajovic. Last year he gave the team north of 8 boards per contest. He's come back. He's been able to give you about 6 boards, 12 points per game, but last year shot over 40% from 3. That's down to about 15% this season for a North Dakota team that as a whole, they're shooting 28.3% from 3-point range. They're not generating a lot of turnovers while they themselves turn the ball over about 13 times per game. They just haven't found that main facilitator either. You don't have a single guy that gives you north of 2 assists per game. I thought that Eli King might potentially be that guy. He certainly has not been. Meanwhile, for UTSA, you've got Primo Spears, who's been able to give you a well north of 20 points per game. Now, he's a little bit of a chucker throughout his career. He's been a low 33-point shooter, but he's a guy that certainly is able to put the ball in the basket for this team. And it's a UTSA team that just, over their last few games in general, they've been able to build a little bit more confidence. Marcus Millender in the backcourt is able to give you a few assists, right around about 10 points per contest. And it's very touch and go in terms of what you're able to get out of Mari Monsanto. 2 seasons ago at Wake Forest was a 40+% 3-point shooter and was one of the best, I guess you call it, 3-point shooting dynamos in all of college basketball. But I mean, he's been up and down, but it has been able to give the team double figures thus far this season for UTSA, outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. But Janavius Smith should have himself a nice day down low. He's been able to pull him for this team. 9 boards per contest, only giving you about 6 points per game, but they get to go up against a North Dakota team that is right around about 295th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they have just been getting absolutely pelted with regards to their defense, as this is a unit in North Dakota that they have given up at least 75 points in, I believe, every one of their games against a Division I foe thus far this season. Do you think that UTSA is going to be able to put up a big number? UTSA does rank in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. They've gotten to at least 74 points in 3 of their last 4 games, playing against Houston Christian and Merrimack, 2 teams that have really slowed down their tempo. So, circumstance for 156 or less, I'm in on the over 157 or higher, the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12 with the UTSA, 13 or more, taking those points with North Dakota. Now we had our 2 extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-551, 306-552. Army is on the road against George Washington, our nation's first president. Between 11.5 to 12-point favorites, totals between 148 to 148.5. I'm going to be writing up the under in this game. I did set my total at a 141.5. Army's actually been playing a little bit more up-tempo this year, and to their credit, they've gotten into the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Jalen Rucker has made all the difference there. 19 points per game, and Ryan Curry off the ball, he's got an assist-to-turnover ratio of 3. He's been able to supply the team with 13 points, and is currently shooting 47.5% from 3-point range with a combined 37 points in the last 2 games. Do you think that that's going to slow down? And for Army, their tempo is very much warped a little bit because they played that double overtime game against Lemoyne, which makes it look like they have more possessions than what they do, and they also were taken to overtime by Marist as well. So that does lead to the numbers being a little bit misleading. Josh Govins, 5 boards, 17.5 points per game. It's an Army team that as a whole, they're shooting about 35.5% from 3-point range and turn the ball over much less than they did in past seasons. Meanwhile, for George Washington, you do have a team that very much prioritizes being able to get to the free throw line. They're a top 12 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their points that come from made free throws. Meanwhile, you've got an Army team that's in the top 20 nationally in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis on defense. So I do think that a lot of the scoring opportunities that George Washington has gotten at the charity stripe not going to be there. Big reason why at a 12 I'm willing to take the points with Army. You do have Darren Buchanan for the George Washington team giving you a steal and a half, 16.5 points per game, and then you've had down low, about 8 boards, 7 points per game out of Rafael Castro as well as coming for Providence. But again, a little bit of a top-heavy team. They're starting to get a bit more out of someone like a Christian Jones, who's coming to the program. He's been able to slide the team with 7 points per contest as a freshman. And Trey Autry, a little bit of an undervalued guy that's shooting 45% from 3 with 9.5 points per game, but it's been very sporadic. Towards his scoring, he had 15-plus points in 3 straight games, and over the last 2 games, he combined 9 points. And I do think that Army is going to be able to hold in there down low with A.J. Allenpatch, be able to supply the team with 8.5 rebounds per game. So I'm going to be writing up the under in this spot. I do think that with George Washington's inability to be able to get to the free throw line, going to cause for a little bit of a lower scoring slog. And we have seen this George Washington team step up with their defense. 70 points or fewer allowed in regulation in each of their last 4 games. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take those points with Army. And then we wrap things up with 306-553, 306-554. Merrimack is going to be playing us at Boston U. Boston U is an underdog of 6 points. Total on this game, it is 125.5. I also set my total at a 125.5, so I'm going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement here. We're seeing a little bit earlier a 125 flat, and at a 125 flat, that's my max buy point on the over, but I'm going to be willing to take the 6 with Boston U. You've got a Merrimack team that, once again, is one of the best teams in all of college basketball at generating turnovers, and defense has been rock solid once again, giving up 68 or fewer in each of their last 3 games. You've got a Boston U team that is outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but we have seen this Boston U team pop off a little bit more in terms of their offense. Not saying they're amazing, but 65 plus points in each of their last 5 games. Recognize that one of those games was against a non-D1 team, but you've been able to have Corona Alexander be able to supply the team with 14 points, 5 boards, shooting 40% from 3-point range, was dealing with a little bit of an injury in the team's game against a non-D1 foe. I think that was more precautionary than anything else. Should be good to go in this one. And then Miles Brewster, Michael McNair. These 2 guys are combined for 20 points. Both of these guys, along with Alexander, I'll give between 2 and 2.2 assists per contest as well. McNair has been able to shoot 42% from the outside. And for Boston U, the key is they do need to lock down with regards to these turnovers. They are turn the ball over 15 times per game, but when they don't turn it over, they do shoot 36% from 3-point range. And Merrimack just not a team that's going to light you up from the outside. Right now, shooting 29% as a collective, as Adam Clark has had to be the main man for this team. 5 assists, 20 points, 2 steals per contest. He has been tremendous. And then you've got Devon Savage along Sean Trumper combining for 19.5 points per game. With Trumper now shooting 37.5% from the outside. Brian Antamino is able to give you 5 rebounds per game. And something that is hurting Boston U is that one of their main rebounders from a season ago, and Otto Landrum, has yet to hit the floor. So you've had Malcolm Chamaisi give you a little bit over a block, 6 rebounds per game. He's had to be that main man down low, but I do take a look at this circumstance. I do think the Boston U has enough to hold in there. Recognize that Boston U has turned the ball over a lot, and that Merrimack's main strength is being able to generate turnovers, but Merrimack having a really tough time being able to knock down those threes. Boston U pretty good with regards to perimeter defense. I'm in on the 125 or less over and 6+ with Boston U, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rocco Miller, who does great work over at Bracketeer.org. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated from there. You're able to fire in whatever you'd like here on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I will be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.